I didn't believe the recordings at first. That's the part that still keeps me awake. Because if I had believed them, maybe Daniel would still be alive. The tapes were discovered underneath a condemned radio station just outside Black Hollow, Montana, a place so isolated that even GPS systems struggled to recognize the roads around it. The station had been abandoned since 1996, after an electrical fire killed 3 overnight employees. At least that was the official story. But in the winter of 2023, a demolition crew found a locked basement hidden beneath the building's foundation. Inside were hundreds of cassette tapes. Every single one was labeled with a date. Every single one contained recordings of people screaming. And every single scream ended the exact same way, with static. The problem was, some of those tapes were dated years into the future, including one with my brother's name on it. I first heard about Black Hollow after Daniel called me around 2 in the morning. My younger brother had always chased strange stories online. Missing persons cases, urban legends, abandoned buildings. If the internet whispered about something cursed, Daniel wanted to film it. That obsession eventually turned him into a successful documentary creator. Thousands of followers, millions of views. But after our mother died, something changed in him. The stories stopped being entertainment. He started looking for proof. Real proof. Proof that death wasn't the end. "Ethan," he said during that call, his voice shaking through layers of static. "I found something bad." I sat upright in bed. Outside my apartment, rain hammered against the windows. "What happened?" "You remember the station I told you about, WBRK? The burned one?" "Yeah." He inhaled sharply. I got inside. I rubbed my eyes. "You called me at 2 in the morning because you broke into another abandoned building?" "No, listen to me." There was fear in his voice. Real fear. Not excitement. Not curiosity. Fear. "I found recordings," he whispered. I heard a sound behind him. A low crackling noise, like an old radio searching for a signal. "Daniel?" "They knew we were coming." "Who knew?" The static grew louder. Then I heard another voice. Not through the phone. Behind him. A woman. Soft. Barely audible. "Don't let it hear you." The call disconnected. I tried calling him back immediately. No answer. Again. Straight to voicemail. By sunrise, I was driving toward Black Hollow. The town looked dead long before I reached it. Empty gas stations. Collapsed barns. Telephone poles leaning sideways in frozen fields. Snow covered everything like ash. Black Hollow itself sat between dense pine forests and jagged mountains that swallowed most sunlight by early afternoon. Population 317, at least according to the rusted sign near the entrance. It felt smaller. Much smaller. Like the town was shrinking. I stopped at the only diner still open, a place called Maggie's. Inside, old country music played softly through ceiling speakers. The waitress stared at me too long before pouring coffee. "You're not from here," she said. "No. You shouldn't stay after dark." The way she said it sounded practiced, like a warning repeated many times before. "I'm looking for my brother." I showed her Daniel's picture. Recognition flashed across her face instantly. "He went to the station." "When?" "Yesterday." "Did he come back?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the kitchen. An older man stood there watching us. His expression hardened when our eyes met. The waitress lowered her voice. "You need to leave town." "Where's the station?" Her hands trembled slightly. "North Road, past Miller's Creek." Then she leaned closer. "If you hear voices on the radio," she swallowed. "Do not answer them." The station sat at the edge of the forest overlooking a frozen valley. Even burned down, the structure looked massive. Charred walls, broken transmission towers, windows blackened by fire. Snow drifted through empty hallways where equipment had melted decades ago. Daniel's truck was parked outside, unlocked. His camera bag remained on the passenger seat. But Daniel was gone. I searched the building for nearly an hour. The upper floors were mostly destroyed. Collapsed ceilings, burned offices, old recording rooms coated in soot. Then I found the basement door, hidden beneath warped wooden panels. The lock had been cut recently. "Daniel's doing." I opened the door slowly. Cold air rushed upward. The staircase descended farther than it should have. Concrete walls lined with moisture. Rusted pipes overhead. And somewhere below, static, faint, continuous, like an endless radio transmission. My flashlight revealed a massive underground room. Shelves stretched across the walls. Hundreds of cassette tapes organized in perfect rows. A recording desk sat in the center beside equipment far older. Then the station upstairs. Reel-to-reel machines, microphones, ancient radio consoles. Most were still running, despite the fact there was no visible power source. The static came from dozens of speakers mounted along the ceiling. I called Daniel's name. No response. Then I noticed the labels. Every tape had a date. January 4th, 1987, May 12th, 1991, October 3rd, 2004. Thousands of recordings, organized chronologically. Then I found one labeled Daniel Mercer. December 14th, 2026, 3 years in the future. My blood turned cold. I stared at the tape for several seconds before realizing something worse. Today's date was written beside another cassette. Ethan Mercer, November 18th, 2023. Mine. My hands shook as I backed away. The speakers crackled overhead. Static flooded the room. Then voices emerged. Whispers, hundreds of them, layered together. Impossible to understand. I turned toward the staircase. The door slammed shut above me. The lights flickered, and a tape recorder beside the desk clicked on by itself. A woman's voice filled the room. Calm, cold. "If you are hearing this, the signal has already found you." The tape hissed. "My name is Eleanor Voss, senior operator at WBRK radio station. Recording date, February 26. Static interrupted her briefly. "If anyone discovers these archives, do not attempt to broadcast the recordings." A loud metallic bang echoed somewhere deeper underground. Eleanor continued speaking faster now. "It mimics voices. It learns through repetition. The more people listen, another burst of static, the stronger it becomes." I stepped toward the recorder. "What the hell is this?" The tape responded instantly. Not Eleanor. "Daniel. Ethan." My heart nearly stopped. His voice sounded weak, distant. "Don't turn around." I froze. Breathing stopped in my chest, because behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, wet, dragging across concrete. The flashlight trembled in my hand. "Daniel?" No answer. Only static. Then another voice whispered directly beside my ear. "He isn't alive anymore." I spun around. Nothing. The room stood empty, but the shelves had changed. The tapes were no longer organized. Many now lay scattered across the floor, as if someone had searched through them moments earlier. And at the far end of the basement, a doorway stood open. I was certain it hadn't been there before. The static from the speakers intensified. The doorway led into a narrow corridor descending deeper underground. The walls looked older than the station itself. Stone instead of concrete. The air smelled damp, rotten, almost sweet, like flowers left too long beside a grave. Every instinct told me to leave. But Daniel was somewhere down there. Or had been. I followed the corridor. The static faded gradually until the silence became unbearable. Then I noticed symbols carved into the walls, circular patterns, hundreds of tiny overlapping spirals, some scratched deep into stone, others smeared in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. The tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller, older. Candles melted across the floor. Rust-covered recording equipment surrounded a large radio transmitter built directly into the rock, and sitting beside it was Daniel's camera, still recording. I grabbed it immediately. The battery somehow remained alive. The footage began playing automatically. Daniel appeared on screen inside this same room. Exhausted, terrified. "There's something under Black Hollow," he whispered to the camera. His face looked pale, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "I think the station was built on top of it. A loud static burst interrupted the audio. Daniel flinched, then continued. The recordings aren't random. He turned the camera toward the transmitter. The voices come from the signal. What signal? I muttered. On screen, Daniel looked suddenly toward something off camera. Fear flooded his face. No. He backed away slowly. The camera shook violently. Then I heard it. A voice. My voice. Daniel. On the footage, Daniel stared directly into darkness behind the camera. It copied him, he whispered. Then screaming erupted. The camera crashed sideways. Static consumed the screen, and for a split second, I saw a face. Not human. Its skin stretched tightly across something impossibly thin. Its mouth hung open too wide, filled with darkness instead of teeth. The footage ended. The room around me fell silent. Then the transmitter turned on. A deep vibration pulsed through the stone floor. Red lights flickered inside the machinery. Static exploded from hidden speakers, and voices flooded the chamber. Crying, screaming, begging, thousands of voices layered together into one impossible sound. I dropped the camera. The whispers grew louder, closer, until individual words emerged. Stay. Listen. Join us. Then I heard my mother's voice. Perfectly clear. Ethan. Every muscle in my body locked. My mother had been dead for 2 years, but I knew that voice. I knew it better than my own. Mom? The static softened. The transmitter crackled gently, and her voice returned. I'm here. Tears burned my eyes instantly. The chamber around me disappeared beneath grief I thought I'd buried. You don't have to miss me anymore, she whispered. The darkness beyond the transmitter shifted. Something moved inside it. Tall, thin, watching, but the voice kept speaking. It hurts here, Ethan. I stepped forward unconsciously. Help me. My heartbeat thundered. Every logical thought dissolved. I wanted to believe it. Needed to believe it. Then Daniel's voice screamed through the static. It's not her! The chamber erupted violently. All the speakers burst at once. A deafening shriek ripped through the room. The dark figure lunged forward. For one horrifying second I saw it clearly. Its body looked made from tangled shadows and stretched human limbs. Faces moved beneath its skin. Dozens of them. Mouths opening silently, eyes blinking from impossible places. The thing emitted static instead of breathing. I ran. The corridor behind me twisted strangely, longer than before. The walls pulsed with whispers. Footsteps scraped rapidly behind me. Not 2 feet. Many. Like several people crawling together. I reached the basement staircase and slammed into the locked door. It wouldn't open. The static screamed. The static screamed. Not through the speakers. Through the walls. Through the floor. Through my skull. I slammed my shoulder against the basement door again. Pain exploded down my arm. Still locked. Behind me, the scraping footsteps accelerated through the corridor. Closer. Faster. The whispers became voices. Dozens of them overlapping. Some crying. Some laughing. Some begging for help. And underneath all of them, a sound like breathing. Wet. Heavy. Wrong. I turned my flashlight toward the corridor. For half a second, I saw movement. Human shapes crawling along the walls and ceiling. Too many limbs. Bodies twisting unnaturally in the dark. Then the flashlight flickered. Everything vanished. The whispers stopped instantly. Silence hit so hard it hurt my ears. Then a soft click echoed behind me. The basement door unlocked. I didn't hesitate. I threw it open and sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time. The moment I reached the upper floor, the station lights exploded overhead. Glass rained across the hallway. A violent burst of static erupted from somewhere inside the building. Then every abandoned radio in the station turned on simultaneously. Voices filled the halls. Different ages. Different accents. All saying the same sentence. He heard the signal. I ran outside into the snow. The freezing air hit my lungs like knives. For a moment, I just stood there beside Daniel's truck trying to breathe. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Nothing down there made sense. The tapes, the voices, my mother, that thing in the dark, and Daniel. God, Daniel. I climbed into the truck and locked the doors immediately. My phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. The mountains around Black Hollow swallowed communication towers whole. I shoved the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered once, twice, then died. No. I tried again. Nothing. The truck lights flickered weakly before shutting off entirely. The battery was dead. Something tapped against the driver's side window. I froze, slowly turned my head. A man stood outside, middle-aged, wearing a thick winter coat and a fur-lined hat dusted with snow. I nearly screamed before realizing he looked normal. Human. At least I thought he did. He raised both hands calmly. You need to get away from this place. His voice sounded strained, exhausted. I cracked the window slightly.
Who are you?
My name's Walter. His eyes darted nervously toward the station. You shouldn't be here after sunset. The sky above the mountains had already darkened into deep blue. Night was coming fast. You know what's down there? I asked. Walter stayed silent for several seconds. Then he nodded once. I know enough. I stepped out carefully. The station loomed behind us like a burned corpse against the snow. You saw my brother? Walter's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. He went below the transmitter. What does that mean? Walter grabbed my arm suddenly. His grip was ice cold. If he crossed through the lower chamber, he whispered, then you need to pray he died quickly. Anger surged through me. What the hell is wrong with everyone in this town? Walter looked genuinely disturbed by the question. You really don't know? No. His eyes shifted toward the station windows. Dark shapes moved briefly behind the broken glass upstairs, watching us. Walter immediately pulled me toward his truck parked farther down the road. We can't stay here. What are those things? He opened the passenger door. You'll understand once you hear the first broadcast. I climbed in reluctantly. The heater blasted weak, warm air as Walter drove us away from the station. Snow crunched beneath the tires while darkness swallowed the road ahead. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Walter finally lit a cigarette with trembling hands. The signal started before the station existed, he said quietly. I stared at him. What signal? He exhaled smoke slowly. Nobody knows exactly. The miners found something under the mountain in 1931. That's how Black Hollow began. Silver mining. But after the tunnels were opened, he hesitated. People started hearing things. I leaned back silently. Voices coming through the radios. At first, everyone thought it was interference. Then the voices started saying personal things. Secrets. Names. Things nobody else should have known. Outside, dense pine trees rushed past through the darkness. Walter continued. Some people claimed they heard dead relatives. Others heard missing family members. Some heard themselves. A cold pressure settled in my stomach. The station amplified it, I asked. Walter nodded. In 1972, BRK built transmission equipment directly over the old mining tunnels. After that, he swallowed hard. The signal spread. I remembered the thing in the chamber below. The faces moving beneath its skin. What exactly is it? Walter stared through the windshield for a long moment. Have you ever lost someone? He asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. My mother. Walter nodded slowly. That's how it gets inside you. The truck radio suddenly crackled. Both of us froze instantly. Static hissed through the speakers. Walter lunged forward and shut the radio off immediately. Too late. I heard it. Daniel's voice. We found you. Walter's face went pale. Drive faster, I whispered. He slammed his foot onto the gas. The truck sped down the frozen road as snow thickened around us. Then headlights appeared behind us. Another vehicle. Following closely, Walter checked the mirror once and cursed under his breath. Who is that? He didn't answer. The headlights flashed repeatedly. Closer, closer. Then the radio turned back on by itself. Static roared through the cab, and a woman's voice spoke calmly through the noise. Return to the station. Walter gripped the wheel tighter. Don't listen. The voice continued. The signal is incomplete. My chest tightened. The voice wasn't random anymore. It sounded exactly like my mother. We can bring him back, Ethan. Walter slammed the radio with his fist. Shut up. The speaker screeched violently. Then all sound cut out at once. The headlights behind us disappeared. Walter breathed heavily. What the hell was that? They hear through electricity, he whispered. What? The signal rides frequencies. Phones. Radios. Televisions. Anything that transmits. A horrible realization hit me. The tapes. Walter nodded. That station was never broadcasting music. Snow intensified outside until visibility nearly vanished. Walter finally turned onto a narrow dirt road leading deeper into the forest. Where are we going? My cabin. You'll be safer there. Safer? The word felt meaningless now. After nearly 20 minutes, the trees finally opened into a small clearing. Walter's cabin sat alone beside a frozen lake. No neighboring houses. No lights. Nothing except endless forest. We hurried inside as wind screamed through the trees outside. The cabin smelled like old wood and smoke. Walter locked every door immediately. Then he covered the windows with heavy curtains. You really think curtains stop whatever that thing is? I asked. Walter ignored me. Instead, he opened a closet and removed several old cassette tapes. My stomach dropped instantly. No, you need to hear these. He placed one into an old tape player carefully. The recording began with static. Then a man's voice emerged. Terrified, breathing hard. This is Deputy Collins, the voice whispered. Recording made August 11th, 1989. A loud banging sound echoed in the background. They're not people anymore. Walter stared at the floor silently while the tape continued. The signal changes them slowly. First the voices, then the dreams. Then, the deputy began crying softly. Oh God. A distorted scream erupted somewhere behind him. Gunshots followed immediately. 3 shots. 4. Then silence. The tape hissed. And another voice spoke. Not the deputy. A little girl. Open the door. Walter stopped the recording instantly. The cabin fell silent except for the wind outside. What happened to him? I whispered. Walter looked at me grimly. He locked himself inside the sheriff's station. They found pieces of him 3 days later. I sat down heavily. Everything felt unreal, like some fever dream slowly peeling reality apart. Walter loaded another tape. This one was recorded during the fire. The tape crackled loudly. People screaming. Alarms blaring. Then Eleanor Voss spoke through heavy static. It's inside the transmission. Shut it down. A man shouted in the background. We lost control of the signal. Then another voice interrupted her. Deep, distorted, not human. You open the door. The tape warped violently. Static exploded. Then came screaming. Not ordinary screaming. Agony, pure terror. Walter shut the tape off quickly. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I looked at him. Why are you helping me? Walter stared toward the dark windows. Because 20 years ago, he whispered, my daughter heard the signal too. Something in his voice broke apart when he said it. She was 8. I stayed quiet. Walter swallowed hard. She started talking to someone through the radio every night. At first we thought it was imaginary. Then she began repeating things nobody told her. Things buried under the town. He rubbed his eyes shakily. One morning she disappeared. The cabin creaked softly around us. Snow battered the roof outside. We searched the forest for weeks. His voice became quieter. Then one night, he stared at the tape player. I heard her voice coming through my truck radio. My skin crawled. What did she say? Walter looked directly at me. She said she was cold. Silence swallowed the room. Then, 3 knocks echoed against the cabin door. Walter's face drained of color instantly. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Neither of us moved. Another knock. Then Daniel's voice came from outside. Ethan? My entire body locked up. Walter grabbed my wrist hard. Do not open that door. but Daniel sounded terrified. Weak. Please. Snow crunched softly outside the cabin. I'm hurt. Tears filled my eyes instantly. Daniel? Walter tightened his grip painfully. It copies voices. Then came another sound outside. Crying. My mother's voice. Ethan, let us in. The cabin lights flickered. The radio turned on by itself again. Static flooded the room, and dozens of voices whispered together through the speakers. He opened the door. Walter lunged toward the radio and ripped the power cord from the wall. The static died instantly, but the voices outside didn't. Snow crunched slowly around the cabin, circling it. Not one set of footsteps. Many. I stared at the door while my heartbeat pounded so hard it hurt. Daniel, I whispered. The voice outside sounded exhausted now. Weak. Please open the door. Walter shook his head immediately. You open that door and you die. Another knock echoed softly through the cabin. Then another. Then silence. Complete silence. No wind. No footsteps. Nothing. Walter slowly reached beneath the kitchen counter and pulled out a shotgun. Old, rust-covered, but loaded. You seriously think that'll stop them? No, he muttered. Then why carry it? He stared toward the dark window. Because it helps me feel human. A sudden impact slammed against the cabin wall outside. The entire structure shook violently. I jumped backward. Another slam hit the roof. Heavy, like something massive crawling overhead. Walter killed the lantern immediately, plunging us into darkness. Don't move, he whispered. We sat in silence while slow scraping noises dragged across the roof. Back and forth. Back and forth. Then came whispering, not from outside, inside the cabin walls. Voices moving through the wood itself. I heard fragments. Still hungry. Bring him below. He belongs to the signal. Cold sweat ran down my neck. The whispers shifted suddenly. Now they sounded like people I knew. Friends, family, old classmates, voices from years ago. Every regret, every memory, every loss. The thing underground wasn't just copying people. It was learning them. A loud crash exploded upstairs. Walter flinched hard. There is no upstairs, I whispered. The crash came again, directly above us. Slow footsteps followed. Heavy, deliberate. Walking across the ceiling. Dust drifted down around us. Walter raised the shotgun with trembling hands. Then the footsteps stopped. A horrible silence followed, and from directly above my head, my mother's voice whispered softly, You left me alone. I nearly broke. Every ounce of grief came rushing back at once. I squeezed my eyes shut. It isn't her, Walter whispered harshly. But the voice sounded perfect. Exactly perfect. I waited for you, Ethan. Tears filled my eyes. Then another voice joined hers. Daniel, why didn't you save me? The ceiling creaked loudly. Wood bending under impossible weight. Walter backed toward the fireplace slowly. There's a tunnel beneath this cabin, he whispered. What? It connects to the old mining routes. My stomach dropped. You built your house over the tunnels? I didn't know at first. Another loud impact hit the roof. Cracks spread across the ceiling. Walter shoved a flashlight into my hands. If they get inside, run. What about you? I've been hearing the signal for 20 years. His voice sounded tired, hopeless. It wants fresh minds now. A deep screech suddenly echoed through the forest outside. Not human, not animal, something ancient. The window shattered instantly. Frozen wind exploded into the cabin. Shapes moved outside in the storm. Tall, distorted, wrong. Faces pressed briefly against the broken glass before disappearing. Walter fired the shotgun. The blast deafened me. Something screamed outside, but it didn't sound hurt. It sounded angry. The cabin light suddenly flickered back on, even though the power cord still lay disconnected on the floor. The radio crackled alive again. Static roared through the room. And then, a broadcast began. Calm, clear. A woman's voice. Good evening, Black Hollow. Walter's face went pale instantly. No, the voice continued. You're listening to WBRK after midnight. Static pulsed softly beneath her words. Tonight's signal is dedicated to those still hiding from the dark. The walls began vibrating. The floor beneath us trembled. The voice on the radio laughed quietly. They always return eventually. The cabin door burst inward violently. Snow flooded the room, and something stepped inside. At first glance, it looked human. A woman wearing an old winter coat. Head lowered, hair soaked from snow, but her arms were too long, fingers dragging against the floorboards. Walter whispered one word. "Claire." The woman slowly lifted her head. Walter gasped. It was his daughter, or what used to be his daughter. Her face looked stretched unnaturally tight across her skull, eyes completely black. Her mouth opened wider than humanly possible. Static poured from inside her throat instead of breath. Walter's shotgun lowered slowly. "Claire," he whispered again, tears filling his eyes. The creature smiled, then spoke in dozens of voices at once. "You never stopped listening." Walter froze completely. I saw it happen instantly. The same thing almost happened to me underground. The signal wasn't controlling people physically. It infected grief, loneliness, guilt. The creature took one slow step forward. Walter didn't move. "Dad," it whispered softly in Claire's real voice. That broke him. He collapsed to his knees, crying. The thing lunged instantly. Its jaw split open unnaturally wide as static screamed from its body. I grabbed Walter and pulled him backward, just before it crashed onto the floor where he'd been kneeling. The thing moved like a broken spider, limbs snapping violently against wood as it crawled toward us. Walter fired again. The blast tore through its shoulder. But underneath the torn flesh, there was nothing. Only darkness, moving darkness. The creature shrieked. Every radio in the cabin exploded simultaneously. Glass and sparks filled the air. Then more figures appeared outside the broken windows. Dozens of them standing in the snow, watching silently. Some looked human. Others barely resembled people anymore. And among them, I saw Daniel, standing motionless beneath the trees, his face pale, eyes empty. My chest tightened painfully. "Daniel!" Walter grabbed me instantly. No. But Daniel looked alive, terrified. He raised one trembling hand toward me. "Help me." The figures around him slowly turned their heads in perfect synchronization, watching me, waiting. Then Daniel smiled. Too wide. Static crackled from his mouth. And every figure in the forest whispered together. "The signal remembers everyone. If you're hearing this, it might already know your voice. Some signals were never meant to be found, and some places should stay buried forever. If tonight's story disturbed you, make sure you subscribe to Rust and Relic and keep your radio off after midnight, because the next transmission is already waiting. Comment below, what would you do if a dead loved one spoke to you through static? And remember, if you ever hear whispering from an empty room, do not answer it.